Hey everyone, this is Vil. So in this episode, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Istanbul, Turkey as a digital nomad, or if you're traveling in general. I will tell you every little detail from costs to food, transportation, nightlife, community, so on and so forth. Hopefully, I will cover all of the questions that you might have. By the way, make sure to check out all of the links in the description. If you are into digital marketing, online business, I have some very useful freebies, and make sure to check out my other YouTube channels and social media networks. Now let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing when it comes to Istanbul and any city in general as a digital nomad, I would say personally for me is community. And it's really weird when it comes to Istanbul because I looked at some statistics actually on Nomad list and whatnot, and it seems there's a lot of digital nomads that stop by in Istanbul throughout the year. However, I guess because it is such a massive city, I believe it's 30 million people or even more than that. Because of that, I don't think there is one place where digital nomads really concentrate, like one co-working space or anything like that. And even though a lot of people do seem to come to Istanbul, it doesn't honestly seem to have a huge community of digital nomads. I did see there is a little bit of community and people are starting to organize some events. So do check it out again, depending on when you are listening to this or watching this, because I have seen growth in terms of digital nomads in Istanbul. And because the currency right now is decreasing in value, I think more and more digital nomads are going to take advantage of that. But as for now, I would say it's definitely not one of those spots where you come and you're going to meet a ton of digital nomads. It's going to require some time to find other people out there. I do have to say though, there are quite a few different co-working spaces. So if there aren't digital nomads that are internationals, you might still find a lot of Turkish people that might also do something related to digital business, working online, all of that kind of stuff. And honestly, in general, I do see a lot of foreigners in Istanbul. It's, again, I think it's just lacking that sort of concentration and organization. Next thing is accommodation. So honestly, when it comes to all of the different aspects of life in Istanbul and Turkey, compared to everything else, I would say accommodation is more expensive and it isn't as good, especially in Istanbul out of whole Turkey, because I've stayed in different places. Check out some of my other episodes on different places if you want in Turkey. But in Istanbul, I would say, again, because it is such a crowded city, that accommodation is more expensive compared to other places. And also, I would say, I don't know what it is, but a lot of the apartments, they are kind of old and they have very old style. So yes, technically you can find accommodation that is very cheap. You can find accommodation maybe for, let's say, one bedroom apartment, you could probably find maybe for $300-400 a month. But at the same time, it's not just about how cheap it is, but it's also about the quality. So when it comes to quality, if you want something that's a little bit modern, a little bit nicer, I would say you're going to probably pay more towards maybe $700, maybe $1,000, depending on through which platform you're booking. Whether you're finding it through an agent and you're renting long-term, then it's going to be obviously much cheaper. It also depends a lot whereabouts you are booking your accommodation. So if you're booking not within, let's say, the sort of the central area, if you're booking quite a bit outside the town, the prices can decrease quite a bit. And honestly, as long as you are by a subway line, it's not going to take you that long to get anywhere within, at least if you're within the European side of the city. If you're on the Asian side of the city, accommodation is actually much cheaper there. But then if you want to go from Asian side to European side, that takes really long time, so I wouldn't really recommend it. I personally prefer the European side a lot more, so I wasn't even looking at accommodation options on the Asian side, even though I do know for a fact it is a lot cheaper. Another thing to keep in mind, again, because Istanbul is such a crowded and just crazy loud city, that a lot of apartments, they're going to have a lot of noise. So do keep that in mind, especially if you're going to book Airbnb. When I first came, I just booked Airbnb for a month, and it turned out not to be the quietest one. So now the Airbnb that I'm in right now, it did take me some time. I did go see these Airbnbs beforehand, before actually making the booking, and now I managed to find a very quiet apartment, but that's something to keep in mind. Next point is food. And by the way, even before talking about food, one thing that you have to understand about Turkey right now and Istanbul is that, as I mentioned, currency is decreasing in value quite a bit, so prices are constantly changing. And right now, I would say, as I'm recording this, it is very cheap, and it looks like it's going to become cheaper and cheaper. But I have already, within the couple of months that I've spent here in Turkey in general, I have seen prices change quite a bit. So do take all of that into consideration, but I don't think they are going to change drastically. So when it comes to food in Istanbul, there are so many different restaurants and so many different options. I am actually really pleasantly surprised of how many different things there are out there. Even the neighborhood that I moved in just now, I am so excited to try out all of the cool restaurants around. So when it comes to food, basically you have two different options. So first of all, you have local Turkish food, and then you have different international food. So for Turkish food, if let's say you're having something like a wrap, or perhaps you're having a plate of food, a dish, or they do have these places where you can choose what food you want to get. So in general, I would say a dish would be somewhere between $2 to $4 depending on the place and depending on the dish itself. $2 would definitely be on the lower side, and that's maybe more of just a quick wrap, a quick snack. I usually pay around maybe $4 when I eat Turkish food. When it comes to Western food, it is a little bit more expensive, but really it's not that much of a difference, honestly. So for Western food, for a good dish, I would say you can expect to pay anywhere from $5 to $7. So really, it's not that much of a difference. And the quality, I would say, from the places that I at least tried, and I usually do tend to find some good places beforehand, the quality was really good. And this is just kind of the basic stuff. Obviously, some restaurants might be a lot more expensive, especially if you go to some restaurants that have very nice view, then obviously the prices are going to go quite a bit more. But even some of the restaurants that I went to, they were very modern, very nice looking restaurants, and the dishes there were only maybe $7, around $7-ish. Now, if you want to cook yourself, then there are grocery stores on pretty much every single corner out there in Istanbul, and you do have your big chains, big supermarkets like Migros, Bims, so on and so forth. So you have a couple of chains that are these very value chains, very cheap chains, and then you have some a little bit more expensive, a little bit more options, and you do have quite a few local stores. And I really like they have these veggie and fruit stores, and you will find them pretty much in every neighborhood. I think in Istanbul, I see them everywhere, and they have a lot of very nice looking, very fresh, very tasty vegetables and fruits. And in general, when it comes to food, I would say you do have quite a lot of, if you're buying food, I mean different products, you do have quite a few options, again, because Istanbul and Turkey is, well, Istanbul specifically has European side and has Asian side, and you can find, well, I would say mostly it's sort of European type of food, and really you can find quite a few different things within the stores. It really isn't the case where sometimes you go to certain countries in Asia, or let's say even I was in Georgia before Turkey, and I did struggle to find certain things, but I would say Turkey, Istanbul is pretty good balance between, let's say, the Western world and Asia. It definitely has quite a few options in the supermarkets, and there's a lot of bakeries as well, so you can find some good bread and all of those kind of things. Next is co-working spaces. So there are actually quite a lot of co-working spaces. Again, it's a huge, massive city, so obviously there's quite a few co-working spaces, and they do look pretty nice. They cost, I believe, on average around $120, $150 for just a hot desk. And as I said, there isn't one co-working space, at least I haven't found one, that would really sort of cater to digital nomads or would have a community of digital nomads. Hopefully that is going to change, or perhaps if you know one, then do leave that in the comments. But there are quite a lot of co-working spaces to choose from. Next is transportation. So in Istanbul, you have a lot of different transportation methods. You obviously have subway, you have buses, you even have ferries, and you got your Uber and all of that. They have their own local apps as well that you can use for transportation. So first of all, subway is, I would say it's pretty good. It's pretty convenient. It really depends where exactly you live. I on purpose try to book all of my Airbnbs close to the subway station. But if you are, I did see a lot of places that were really cool looking apartments, but they were maybe 20-minute walk from a subway, so do take that into consideration. It seems like there's a lot of buses as well. I didn't take too many buses, to be honest, but it definitely, from what I saw at least, it seems that you can definitely use quite a bit of public transportation, and you can really get pretty much anywhere that you want quite conveniently. It's not going to take too much time. There aren't really that many different lines and all of that. And as I said, if let's say you live on the European side, then if you take a subway, you're probably just going to take one line. Sometimes you might change two lines, but most likely if you just take one line, then it's going to take you maybe 10-minute ride, and that's it. If you have one change, maybe max, I think I did 20 minutes on a subway. I don't think it even was 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. So it isn't something like London, where I know in London I remember, or Seoul, Korea, I remember sometimes I would be for 45 minutes on a subway. So it's definitely not the case with Istanbul, unless if you are on the Asian side. Then if you want to come to European side, or the other way around as well, they don't really have a metro line that connects one side to the other. So then you will need to take a subway somewhere within your side where you are, and then take a bus or take a ferry to the other side, and that is going to add up quite a lot of time. So then I think usually, again, depending where you want to go and all of that, it's usually going to take you like an hour. That's why I prefer, as I said, to stay on the European side, because that commute is just too long for me. When it comes to taxis and Ubers, you do have a lot of taxis and Ubers, but I do have to be honest, sometimes it is a little bit tricky to get Uber or taxi, especially if it's raining, and especially if it's evening, especially Friday and Saturday night. Evening is just absolutely insane. There's so many traffic jams. Honestly, depending again which area exactly you are in, some of the central areas, they are very, very packed, and the roads, they have very, very small roads, and there's traffic jams, and it's just insane. Sometimes a trip that might usually take you 15 minutes Now on, let's say, Friday evening, Saturday evening, it might take you 1 hour. And some of the taxis, they are not even going to bother to pick you up because for them, I guess they just don't want to stay in the traffic. So there is sometimes a little bit of an issue with that. But in general, getting an Uber during the day, during regular hours, it isn't that insane, or it isn't that difficult. And Uber's taxis are, I would say, very cheap compared to pretty much anywhere in the world. So again, let's say if I take a taxi, let me think, last time I took a taxi, I maybe did 20-minute ride, and that was maybe, I want to say, $3, $4, something like that. So really the taxis are very affordable. Oh, and the public transportation, by the way, is very affordable as well. If you take a ticket with a subway or a bus, it's less than $1. I think it's around 70 cents. It also depends whether you buy one-time ticket, whether you buy a package of, let's say, 2 tickets, 3 tickets, 10 tickets, or you get an Istanbul card and you're using that. It all depends, but on average, it's anywhere between, let's say, 50 and 70 cents for a ride. Now, entertainment and going out. So again, one of the things that I like about Istanbul is that it's a huge, massive city, and there's a lot to do and see and all of that. And when it comes to going out, it really depends what exactly you want to do. So in terms of if you want to find some sort of activities, like you want to go see a movie, you want to go rock climbing, or you want to go to trampoline park, or whatever it is, they will have it here. They do, because it's, again, such a giant city. They will have all of these different facilities that you might not find in a smaller city. When it comes to nightlife, you do have to take into consideration that Turkey in general is Muslim, so they don't drink as much alcohol as you would see in other countries where people do consume alcohol freely. I'm not saying, by the way, that people don't drink alcohol. People definitely do drink alcohol, but it's not as common, obviously. So a lot of times, even yesterday was Saturday night and I went out just on these streets. I live in very sort of central area that's very much a party area, and a lot of people you will see, they are on Saturday night, they might just be in a cafe drinking Turkish tea and just chatting and having a dessert. And you wouldn't really see that kind of thing in Europe, but at the same time, you definitely have a lot of pubs and you have a lot of clubs and all of that. And I went to some clubs, and people, obviously, as anywhere in the world, they party and all of that. So you can definitely find some good nightlife if that's what you are into. Again, it's a huge city, so don't expect it, I would say, on every single corner as you might do in certain cities, but there's definitely options if you're going to look for them. General goods are very cheap, I would say, in Istanbul and in Turkey in general. And Istanbul is great for shopping. Although people come here just to shop, and you do have sort of two options. So you do have these Grand Bazaar, basically huge markets that you can buy local goods. It's a lot of actually fake stuff, which is pretty annoying, that they just sell fake things instead of selling something authentic. But you can find some authentic Turkish things as well. And honestly, on some of these, maybe don't go to like a huge bazaar, a huge market. If you want some authentic stuff, just go to some of the streets that just have small stores, and you can find some in terms of clothes, all of those kind of things. Let's say home goods, you will find very cheap things. When it comes to electronics, I would say more or less kind of the same as anywhere in the world. It's not very cheap, it's not very expensive. And then you also have all of the international brands. There's a lot of different malls, and you can find pretty much, I think, any brand that you like. Next is climate. So when it comes to Istanbul, climate is, I would say, fairly extreme. So you do get very hot summers. So in summer it can be up to 30 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is, Fahrenheit. I do need to double check. And during winter, it can get, basically, I would say the minimum is probably around 0. And on certain occasions, you can get some snow, but it doesn't really snow that much. You might get a day or two throughout the year. Most of the places here are, though, pretty well equipped for winter. So when it comes to apartments are very, very warm. So right now it's December right now as I'm recording this. And if you're watching this as a video on YouTube, then you can see I'm just in a t-shirt. This apartment is actually too hot. I just had the window opened. And when you come to go out to restaurants and cafes and all of that, they do have outdoor heating and all of those kind of things. So it actually really is not that bad. I haven't been in winter in 5 years, and I decided to try it out here in Istanbul, and I am pleasantly surprised. It honestly doesn't feel that cold. The only thing is sometimes it is a little bit windy, but in general, if you want to come to Istanbul, I would say that the best is probably spring and autumn, and I've been here during those seasons before, and those seasons really have an amazing weather. Next is internet and phone. So when it comes to internet in Turkey, internet I would say is pretty decent. It's pretty good in Istanbul. A lot of places, well, at least the Airbnbs that I was booking, they had fiber internet, so my internet usually was somewhere around from 60 to 100 megabytes. And when you go to, let's say, different cafes, usually it really depends, but you can definitely find some cafes that have 20 or 40 megabytes internet. And if you want to use internet from your phone, then you can just get, I think Turkcell is the best from what I have heard. This is the one that I use. So you get the SIM card. First time you need to pay a little bit more for the SIM. I don't quite remember. I think it's either $20 or $30. And then after that, it's going to cost you, I believe it's around $6 or $7 for 10 gigabytes, something like that. So it's really not that expensive. And the mobile internet speed is usually, I would say for me, it's around maybe 40 megabytes. When it comes to safety in general, from what I understand and from what I've sort of seen and experienced, it seems that Istanbul is fairly safe city. Again, the only thing that I don't quite know is if you are, let's say, a single female, it might be a little bit different, because when you go out on the streets, you definitely mostly see men out there, and sometimes even in like bigger groups, and you don't really see as many women on the streets. So I can't quite tell in terms of just being, let's say, a solo female traveler, but in general, it definitely doesn't seem like there's a lot of safety issues here. So now if we take sort of general costs in total, I would say that Istanbul is, when you think about, let's say, all of the big cities out there, because a big city is always going to be more expensive, Istanbul is definitely one of the cheapest huge cities in the world. If, let's say, I compare it to something like Bangkok, I would say it's more or less sort of the same, maybe slightly more expensive. So the one thing I would say in Istanbul really is the accommodation. It really depends how much you're going to pay on accommodation. When it comes to transportation, when it comes to food, general goods, all of those things, as I mentioned, they are very cheap. So it really depends. If you get an apartment that is only maybe $400 or $500, then you could live off of 1,000, just spend another $500 on entertainment and transportation and food. But then again, if you want a little bit nicer apartment, I would say, you know, especially, let's say for me, if I want a couple bedroom apartment and it's a little bit nicer in a good area, it's going to be maybe 1,200 or more than that. So it really depends, I would say, mostly on accommodation. When it comes to visas, it really depends which country you're coming from, but for most of the nationalities out there, you get 90 days when you come to Turkey, or you get, no, some countries actually they get 30 days, but then you can come back, you can do a visa run if you want to, and you can come back a couple of times. And if you want to stay longer, it's actually very simple. You can apply for residence permit. So it's going to cost you some money. You can do it yourself, but there are also agencies. So you pay, the price actually just changed this year as far as I know. And I'm not sure exactly, but maybe $300-400 depending where you're from. And there's a few different factors that come into this, but you get residence permit and then you can stay for 1 year without leaving, or well, you can leave if you want to, but basically you get a visa for 1 year. When it comes to English, I would say it's a little bit tricky. So I sometimes do encounter people, young people that speak English, but at the same time, a lot of even younger people, so older generation doesn't really speak English. A lot of young people, they might speak a little bit. And sometimes you do find some people, it's kind of either not really, someone doesn't really speak English or they speak completely fluent English. It's a little bit interesting. But in general, I would say with locals, it's a little bit tricky when it comes to English. So the overall vibe of Istanbul, I would say for me, I personally absolutely love Istanbul. I don't know what it is about this city, but I really love just the overall vibe. There's a lot of very, I would say, interesting architecture. Again, it's sort of Istanbul for me, I would say it's pretty unique from a lot of different places that usually people go to. And at the same time, you do have so many cool little cafes, so many cool little restaurants. You do have a lot of sightseeing if that's something you want to do if you come for just a shorter period of time. Maybe for me, it's just lacking community a little bit, and perhaps another thing as well, if you like to party a lot, obviously then you're going to spend a lot of money on booze and all of that kind of stuff. But in general, oh, by the way, I didn't mention a thing in terms of costs. So if you want to go out, you want to drink and all of that, so a pint of beer, I would say in a restaurant is maybe around from $3 to $4, or maybe from $2 to $4, depending really on which kind of bar you go to. And then if you want, let's say a glass of wine might be around $4, and a cocktail is maybe closer to $6 or $7. But yeah, in general, I love Istanbul vibe. I think it's a very unique city, and I definitely recommend it. I think it's one of those cities that a lot of people maybe come just for a very short period of time, but you can really spend quite a bit of time just exploring all of the different neighborhoods of Istanbul. Do keep in mind it is very crowded, so if that's something that you're not into, then that might be a little bit of a struggle, because every time, wherever at least I live, maybe if you go far away to some far neighborhoods, it's better. But in general, within more the central areas, all of the streets are always going to be very, very crowded. Okay, do let me know if you have any questions. If you're listening to this as a podcast, take the title, put it on YouTube, find the video, and leave your questions in the comments. Or if you have some additional comments on what I said or anything like that. As I said, I do have some very useful freebies if you're into digital marketing, online business, all of that kind of stuff. Check out all of the links in the description. If you find this useful, make sure to smash the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, put on those notifications. Stay awesome, and I'll see you soon.